أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم لا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you. Imad is 13 years old and goes to 8th grade, and he came from Modesto. And now I'll call Farhad Ghazali, who is another grandson of Mr. Ghazali. He's going to do the translation.
In the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful. Seest thou one who denies the judgment to come, then such is the man who repulses the orphan with harshness, and encourages not the feeding of the indigent. So woe to the worshippers who are neglectful of their prayers, those who want but to be seen of men, but refuse to supply even neighborly needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhad. So most of you know why we are here, right? All right. So it is a great pleasure that we have Mr. Ghazali's book launching at this time, and we thank all of you for being here. I know it is a wonderful day outside and you'd much rather be outside, but you chose to be here and we are grateful for that. Our first speaker is Mr. Khalid Said. He is National President of American Muslim Voice and founder of Woodland Mosque. He resides in Sacramento, and he's a regular contributor for Daily Democratic of Woodland.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. May God's peace and blessing be upon all of you. It may be customary just to congratulate an author of the book in this sort of setup. But I would really like to not only congratulate Dr. Ghazali Saab, my friend, for writing this book, but I am also very thankful to him for writing this important book, Islam and Muslims in post-9/11 America. Because this book is basically my story. It's a story of our community in these interesting times. And I feel that this story should have been told, and he took time to write it, and I'm grateful for that. When the laws are written in certain period, or a hysteria is created against a community or a group of people, those are really very troubled time for those communities. But then afterwards, when the dust settles a bit, negative effects start trickling down to the other communities also. And it affects us all eventually. Mr. Ghazali's book does not just tell the story of Muslims or their plight post-9/11, but it also covers perspectives of different diverse communities. The book chronicles events and actions affecting not only Muslims, Arabs, Southeast Asians, but also those who were perceived to be Muslims in this post-9/11 era. When the history is recorded, when the events are described, different people see them differently. And when they write about them, they write them from their own perspectives. And sometimes things are even manipulated to fit an agenda. A lot has been written about the dreadful events of 9/11 and about the period post-9/11 by different people from different angles. I know that this book was written not in one sitting on a one set specific time. It started on 9/11 when the planes hit the buildings and continued to the day when it was sent to the publishers. Mr. Ghazali has written about the events and stories as they unfolded. I believe reading this book, the readers will feel what the Muslims saw, felt, and endured during these long, sad times. The book not only talks about post-9/11 plight, but also about the struggles of Muslims to cope with it and the positive efforts for the betterment of the community they took. By writing this book, Mr. Ghazali's work does not allow others to define us. It does not give others free hand to say whatever about the recent past history of Muslims in America. Again, I would like to thank Mr. Ghazali for writing this book. I have no doubt that it will be a great reference source for the historians. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khalisa. And now I will have Laima from District 20th Assemblyman. She has a message from him. Laima.
Is this good? Yes? Yeah, it's good. My name is Laima Martaza. I'm a district representative for Assemblymember Bill Quirk for Assembly District 20. And he had the pleasure of reading the book that Mr. Ghazali wrote. And so this is a letter on behalf of him. Thanks very much for your book. I've met many Muslims, particularly Afghans, through my work with our Afghan sister city, Hayward Ghazni program, and find that they have the same values, hopes, and dreams that I do. Indeed, the Muslim beliefs reflected those of the early Christian communities. Your book summarized the travails of Muslim Americans who simply wish to be part of our great American community. The Assembly member gives his support to the American Muslim Voice, Mr. Ghazali and Samina, for all their great work with the interfaith dialogue that they're promoting. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will have Zahra Bello from CARE. She's going to read comments from Craig Weisner, who is a really wonderful supporter of the Muslim community, American Muslim Voice, and a good friend of mine. Zahra Bello, please welcome her.
Assalamu alaikum. Craig Weisner is the co-founder of Reach and Teach, a peace and social justice learning company. Craig is a decorated Air Force veteran who served as a Korean linguist, intelligence analyst, and language instructor at the Defense Language Institute from 1979 to 1987. Craig's opinion writing has appeared in the San Jose Mercury News, the San Francisco Chronicle, the Christian Science Monitor, and he's a frequent contributor to the KQED radio Perspective series. He says, "Dear Mr. Ghazali, I am so sorry for not being able to be there in person, but here are my brief comments. Even those of us who deeply care about the plight of our Islamic sisters and brothers in a post-9/11 America and know some of the difficulties they have faced, the sheer magnitude of the discrimination, humiliation, loss of freedom, loss of hope, that are painfully and painstakingly described in this emotionally charged book are devastating. Having stood in one security line at an airport and noticed a dear Muslim friend nearby in another, only to find her in tears an hour later after she had finally been allowed into the boarding area, knowing that she was on her way to visit a dying parent. I can understand the fear and frustration so loudly proclaimed in this book. The real question is whether we as Americans will once again overcome yet another phobia in our long list of phobias, and embrace, rather than fear and shun, our Muslim brothers and sisters as our neighbors and friends. Much peace, Craig." Thank you.
Thank you, Zahra. The friend Craig was talking about was me. We just accidentally happened to be at the airport in the same, next to each other. Ever since I've been in America, about 34 years ago, I came dressed like that, and after 33 years, I'm proud to say I still dress like that. There is nothing wrong with if you choose to dress differently, but for me, I am a representative of Pakistan and a representative of Islam. So I do proudly wear these clothes, doesn't matter where I am. I have gone to White House, I have gone to Senate, conference, every place. So that's why I think they stopped me, because when they asked me to take my scarf off, I refuse. When they asked me to go through the X-ray, I refuse. Because, I hope you all know that during the X-ray, they can see your whole body. So I always ask for private screening. And sometimes they don't like it because you increase their work. So therefore, they will be very mad at you. Some do better than others, but a lot of the time, it's not pleasant. But I will go through that just to make a point. I am here, and I don't need to simulate, and I don't need to integrate. I am here to build an inclusion and beloved community and country, where we have many, many supporters. What our fellow Americans are missing are the Muslims. They are very supportive of us, but we need to reach out to our neighbors, and we need to reach out to our colleagues. A few days ago, I was presenting at a church, and there was a gentleman who came and asked me, I have been working in this company for 10 years. I have a Muslim colleague, and I'm afraid to approach him. I'm afraid to approach him because I don't want to make him defensive. I don't want for him to think that I'm questioning his faith, but I want to understand. So we as Muslims need to make it easier for people to approach us. So all of you are a representative of Islam and whatever country you came from. So be an ambassador, be a good ambassador, have a smile on your face, doing charity, and you're approachable. Our next speaker is Dr. Jesse Ortiz, Woodland Community College professor and the president of Latino community of Yola County. He's from Woodland, California. And I'm proud to say Latino community has honored American Muslim Voice and Ghazali'S for the services that we have been providing.
Good afternoon. Raise this a little bit. Before I start my remarks, I would like to give you a reference point of who I am for the simple sake of many times when I do have the honor to do some presentation on inclusion, people think I'm somewhat different than who they are after hearing my remarks. And not that they're really radical or anything, but just that it's important you know who I am. I was born in California. I'm a product of the public schools. I'm a former Marine Corps veteran who went overseas for approximately 13 months. And presently, I'm a public elected official going on my 11th year. Albert Einstein, someone that most of you should be familiar with, who was a Nobel Prize winner in physics, and probably one of the world's intellect of all time, had a quote. And he said, try not to become a person of success, but a person of value. Mr. Ghazali's book, Islam and Muslims in the Post-9/11 America, is truly a book of value. The book brings to mind the historical injustices that Americans had in the past. The slavery of blacks, the conquering of Native Americans and taking their land, the conquest of the Mexican-American people in the War of 1845, which took away the Southwest, because of something called manifest destiny. The incarceration of Japanese families in the 1940s. And reading the book, that was some of the issues that came to mind. and the historical perspectives that I'm very familiar with. It touched me in certain parts of the book when I thought about my mother when I was 4 years old, who was deported by the Border Patrol in Woodland in front of a store on Bush Street, some of you might be familiar with, because she could not speak English. It was in the 1950s, and it was a federal policy called Operation Wetback. The fact that she could not speak English, she was deported, leaving 9 children behind, including me, for a number of weeks. In chapter 2, Mr. Ghazali does an excellent job on describing how a conservative political base and the mass media continue to provide misinformation about Muslims. This spreads hatred, many times for the sake of political gain. I sincerely believe that since President Obama's election in November 2008, the country has gotten worse in terms of looking at racial and social justice issues. There are political groups such as the Tea Party, which was formed the day after President Obama was elected in November 2008, the day after, which continue to, I believe, be a big issue in terms of race relations in America today. It's interesting to note that in a recent survey done, that 2 of 3 Tea Party members in America believe that the values of the Muslim way are against the American value way. That is wrong. The fact that they would take a position against what it is to be an American. Mr. Ghazali's book is a must-read for novices like myself who continue to share for inclusion practices. It is important that we continue to have courageous conversations, conversations that sometimes may not feel good, but need to take place to understand each other, especially in today's times. In closing, I'd like to share a short story. Last week, I saw a very close friend of mine who's a professor at California State, Sacramento. We share the same views about inclusion, diversity, and acceptance. And he happens to travel a lot to talk about youth and the importance of those same issues that I just mentioned. He was on his way to Chicago, catching a flight out of Sacramento. And as he got on the flight, he took a comfortable seat, like all of us take. And next to him, it was 3 rows, there was a person 1 row apart. Now, my friend Francisco is very similar to me. You start talking, especially when you see a person of color. And the person that was sitting next to him was a Muslim. And they got to talking, a Latino Muslim talking on the same row. They stopped in Dallas to pick up some individuals flying to Chicago from there. An announcement was made on the plane that this was going to be a full flight, that the boarding passengers should take the first seat possible as they got on and boarded the plane. And I share this story because last week when I saw Dr. Ghazali's, I mentioned that I would be here today. Well, as he said the story, 1 person passed, 2 people passed, 3 people passed. He said he was about the 8th row. He knew the flight was getting full, if not full by then. Pretty soon, the person next to him, his Muslim friend, looked at each other, and Francisco, if you know him, would say, "It is what it is. We got an extra seat in the middle of us, no one's going to sit there." 10 people went by, 13 people went by. And obviously the flight was full. About that time that they kind of said, "It is what it is," there was a white young teenager wearing earphones with an earring on it. Didn't hesitate. Sat between both of them. And they nodded at each other. And the young individual said to both of them, "How are you guys doing today?" "Fine." I share this story because The future of inclusionary practices and diversity in America today lies with a lot of those young teenagers I just talked about. The acceptance, the inclusionaries that they believe in, that all people are created equal. A recent study asked those, what we call millennium individuals, between the ages of 18 and 29, the question was asked to them, how do you feel about Muslims? In a study about a year ago. 75% of that age group between 18 and 29 in this study in America indicated that they would not have a problem with a mosque being in their community, that they would not have a problem having a Muslim teacher. The faith in our youth, we have to continue to be positive, and hopefully we continue to move forward for the best now. Mr. Ghazali, I thank you for being a man of value. And I leave with you with a quote from a Mexican president in 1861 who said, "The respect for the rights of others means peace." Thank you.
Sorry. I think what Jesse said about media is so true. I will just share a story with you. In the Central Park in New York, there is a man who witnessed there is a vicious dog that was attacking a little girl. He reached quickly, saved the little girl. There was a New York Times reporter there, and he said, "Oh, can I interview you? I would love to just, write this headline saying that a great American saved a little girl's life." The man said, "But I'm not an American." He said, "Okay, I will write a New Yorker saved the life of a little girl." The man said, "I'm not a New Yorker." He said, "Who are you?" The man said, "I am a Pakistani Muslim." Next day, the story appeared with the headline, "A Muslim Pakistani terrorist attacked a little puppy." So this might be fictional, but this is what the life has been for Muslims. Whatever goes wrong for the past 11 years in our country, Muslims are blamed for that. So with this thought, I will invite Naeem Sayed, our next speaker. He is an activist from Sacramento. Please welcome him.
For inviting. I apologize with the people who don't understand English that sometimes if I switch and change channel to Urdu sometimes because of need. When I got this message, that Ghazali Sahib is writing a book about 9/11, I said, wow, that will be really good. I have heard so many juicy stories, theories. What do you want? Will he add something to that? But when I read the book, hey, it was boring. Simple, plain facts. What are you talking about? No conspiracy? Anyway, what can I say? This is Ghazali. So, there is a word in Urdu Adab, we use, to describe some personalities that is called Maranja Maranj. So, I call Ghazali Sahab ke inki shakhsiyat Maranja Maranj hai. Maranja Maranj is a very peculiar, very beautiful word. इसका मतलब है कि वो शख्स न जो किसी को रंज दे, न रंज पहुंचाए, न रंज खाए. So the person who doesn't hurt other people and at the same time doesn't get hurt also. And that one is reflecting in his book also. Like simple plain facts, he's doing a service as has been described to the people. And the most important thing, if you really see it, the way I look at it, that in a subtle way, he's like a reporter, but in a subtle way he put his point of view also there, that the Muslims are fighting back, are preserving their freedom, their civil rights, and those are very important things. And that is working also. Like we will see all those horror stories also, but the Muslims are more organized. There are more masajids. Yes, there are 2 or 3 cases, when they did not get the permission, but there are 1100 where they got the permission. And the most important thing, if we really look at it from the American point of view in this book, okay, and that we have to carry on, that the people who are working, that phobia that has been described like Islamophobia. So different kind of phobias, discrimination, nepotism, this is part of human nature. The most important thing is that we as a group and the system work against it and make it a better place to live and peace for everybody. So Muslims, we are not working, this group, American Muslim Voice for example, or CARE, okay, Zara Billo is here, is not working only for Muslims. Because today it is Islamophobia, tomorrow it can be homophobia, then black phobia, Latinophobia, all those phobias can be there. If we are stopping it here, together, what we are doing, we are making it, America, a better place to live in the world, and we want to do it for our future generation. So thank you Ghazali Sahab for doing your part, and I thank you more because I am one of those people who always want to write, but I'm very lazy. And in Muslim tradition there are two kinds of duty. Okay, one of them is farz kifaya, okay, like burying a dead body and all. So I put this writing a book also as farz kifaya. So now Ghazali has done, I don't have to do it. Thank you, Ghazali Sahab.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Tashi Zahir, founder.
First of all, I'd like to thank American Muslim Voice, Ms. Samina Fahim, for congratulate Ghazali Sahab, and for American Muslim Alliance for hosting the inauguration of this very important, timely, and a must-read book titled Islam and Muslims in the Post-9/11 America, written by none other but an esteemed member of our community, a dear friend, and a journalist in the truest sense of the word, Janab Abdul Sattar Ghazali. I apologize, I've been down with flu for 2 weeks, and today is my first day back to normal life, so my voice may not support me. 2 weeks ago, when I sent out the invitation for this event to a group of friends and community leaders, a mutual friend wrote back to Ghazali Sahab, and I would like to share a few words from that. He says, "My congratulations on publishing this much-needed book. I'm writing to convey my sincere thanks for your dedication to your chosen profession. In the days of Fox and CNN journalistic types, you are a source of truth and a beacon of hope." End quote. Ustu Raza Sahab, sitting right here, thank you for writing this note. Indeed, you speak for most of us, if not for all of us. Thank you. Respected guests, allow me to submit to you that for politically uninitiated people like me, it is really a difficult task to read a 341-page book and a political book loaded with events and facts and stats, and even more difficult task to try understanding it. I did, however, manage to do it, and by that I only mean that I have read it. It really astounds me to even think about the number of hours and the dedicated effort it must have taken Ghazali Sahab to follow every action and response throughout the US since and regarding the horrendous incident of 9/11 in the year 2001. Ghazali Sahab has called it a source book, and that it is indeed. In this book, he has chronicled not only the details of what happened, but also what transpired in the aftermath of 9/11. In his familiar and unique style, Ghazali Sahab has told a story of how an unforeseen and unexpected incident changed the thinking of so many so quickly and so drastically, and how that change impacted the lives of one American community, American Muslims. Dear friends, I hope you agree with me when I say that most of the past decade has been really trying, rather tumultuous, for the entire community of American Muslims. By nature, most of us were raised as non-interfering and minding our own business type people. The circumstances following 9/11 forced us from a very private to a public life. Unfortunately, this incident divided our communities. It damaged the fabric of our society, affected the health of our democracy, and above all, colored and clouded the wisdom of our policy choices. Here is something that concerns me very much. In this book, Ghazali Sahab tells us that immediately after 9/11, the FBI reported 1,700% increase in hate crimes, and mostly against American Muslims. Unfortunately, as I'm sure all of you already know, this situation not only continues but has escalated to a new height. The recent attempts of Obama administration at changing or strengthening existing gun laws in this country has created another storm of hatred against the administration and the president himself. This has given an unprecedented rise to hate groups, disguised as so-called patriotic groups. It was reported a couple of few days ago that in the year 2008, there were 194 hate groups in the country, but as of now, Homeland Security estimates this number to be 2016. These militia groups are armed with assault weapons and are trained to fight military style. And here's the scariest part. These militia groups are training to fight against their own government of the United States. An analyst from the Homeland Security mentioned at MSNBC that what's happening today unfortunately resembles to what was happening before the Ohio bombing. This is a red flag that needs to be taken very seriously. Coming back to Ghazali Sahab's book, he has extensively written about the erosion of civil rights under the administration of George W. Bush, and has talked about the bigoted politicians, radio and TV show hosts, and the opportunistic campaign of Islamophobics and the right-wing extremists. Ghazali Sahab reminds us of Senate Finance Committee's witch hunt against Muslim charities, especially the Holy Land Foundation, FBI surveillance of mosques, Muslims forced to spy against Muslims, discrimination and harassment faced by American Muslims, men and women in air travel and travel in general. And you just heard an incident personally. I personally remember someone yelling at me and saying, "Go back to your F country," while I was parking my car to go to my office in Los Altos. Last but not the least, Ghazali Sahab reminds us of the US government's attempt at silencing the American Muslim advocacy groups like CARE and ISNA, to name a couple. Ladies and gentlemen, what Ghazali Sahab has highlighted as the challenges we continue to face as American Muslims in this chosen homeland of ours is a monumental task that we must take on in order to protect not only our civil rights and liberties, but those of our next generation and next generations and the generations after that. I sincerely hope we have not forgotten about George W. Bush's gift to us all, the Patriot Act, exclusively targeting American Muslims. Respected guests, my intent is not to fill the room with doom and gloom. The intent is not to create the fear, but to create the resolve for the protection of our civil liberties, and we need to stand against infringement of any rights of any American. We are often reminded that the nations and groups who don't remember the history and take the time to learn from their mistakes vanish from existence. Ghazali Sahab tries to lessen our pain by sharing with us that we are not alone in this fight. Japanese Americans, American Jews, Irish Americans, and above all, African Americans have all endured similar intolerance. Social prejudice, unfairness, and legal injustices in the past. As Americans, I believe it is incumbent upon us to ensure that this doesn't happen to us or any other community ever again. I would like to take a moment to remind all of us a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. And he said, injustice committed anywhere is a threat to peace, to justice, to peace everywhere in the world. Ghazali Sahib presents all of us an opportunity to visit the recent past and remember how we were found guilty by association so quickly by so many in a country that prides itself as being the land of law and order and guarantees through the Constitution justice and fairness for all. At the end of this book, Ghazali Sahib has included a few appendices that provide demographic data about American Muslims, the recent Muslim immigration to the United States, formation and development of Islamic organizations in the US, hidden agenda of the Gallup polls and the Pew Institute. Just before that, his last chapter tells us another story. And this story is about the constructive response of American Muslims and Arabs to all the challenges faced by them. In this section, Ghazali Sahib not only tells us about the positive steps taken by the American Muslims and Islamic organizations, but effectively leads us to ideas and suggestions by reaffirming that as a community, American Muslims has a strong sense of optimism and has the ability to come together and fight back. As a community, we have come long ways, ladies and gentlemen, but we have ways to go. We need to understand that as individuals, we are the ambassadors of the American Muslim community. Each one of us bears the responsibility to reach out, share and educate our non-Muslim friends, neighbors and co-workers. UMA and American Muslim Voice have done a commendable job of reaching out to other communities through interfaith and intercommunities programs and events, and please join me in giving them a well-deserved round of applause. Allow me to talk about one last thing that I personally see as an issue that can be resolved should we all come together to do that. In his book, Ghazali Sahib has repeatedly mentioned the phrase 7 million strong American Muslims. If you recall, in 2004, in his famous speech, 2008, in his famous speech in Cairo, President Obama also used the same number and was criticized relentlessly. If you look carefully, there are numerous organizations that have given us that estimate of Muslims in America. The number ranges anywhere from just under 2 million to 6 million, 7 million, and even 10 million. Ghazali Sahib speaks to this issue in this book on page 233, and he describes to us the method by which CARE reached the conclusion that there are 6 to 7 million of us Muslims in America. To the best of my understanding, the method is based upon extrapolation of some data gathered from some of the mosques in US. I could be wrong, but in my humble opinion, this method would be considered unscientific by most methods, to say the least. Dear friends, we happen to live in an age of nanotechnology today, where we have the ability to measure 100,000th of a human hair. It may be naive to say this, but I really don't think counting people is that difficult a task if we put our minds to it. Personally, I cannot think of one good reason why we would not want to know the real number of Muslims in America. According to one report from a reliable source, we had 2,106 mosques in US in the year 2011. In addition to the mosques, we have many more Islamic schools, organizations, and it may not be the easiest thing, I understand, but I think we need to try to come up with a number that is based on facts, not samples and extrapolations. Maybe American Muslim Alliance can take the lead on this project, I sincerely think it's time, ladies and gentlemen, let's stand up and be counted. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Abdul Jabbar. He's retired English professor from University of Berkeley. Professor.
Assalamu alaikum, friends. One correction. I wish I could be retired, but I am not. I look forward to that state of being retired. I'm still working, but working as emeritus professor at City College. The book that Ghazali'S has written is really monumental, and all of us can be proud of that book. My brief review will not be able to do justice to a book of this complexity and depth. So I will urge you to please read the book and then go back to it many, many times for fact-checking, because the book is indeed a great source book in which Ghazali Sahib has put in so much information that the book's promise is inexhaustible. And I like the idea that he has added appendices. So I can visualize a few more appendices in a couple of months, such as the use of drones, such as the attempt to challenge the National Defense Authorization Act, which was challenged by some very prominent Americans, such as Noam Chomsky and a few others. Unfortunately, that challenge was not upheld by the court, Supreme Court. But I can see Ghazali Sahib is also a fighter, a courageous resistor to injustice. So I can see the book evolving in the months to come. So my brief review is going to be limited to two aspects of the book. One aspect is the shocking, jaw-dropping facts and statistics. The book is a treasure trove of all that information. The second aspect which I would like to introduce, and I see it in the book, which I think is very, very important, is the positive coloring to this otherwise very bleak canvas. And that coloring that is positive comes from some courageous resistance on the part of people. One Caucasian American Muslim in Oregon, Portland. One Japanese American who was sent to a relocation camp. So they both fought back and they won their battles. So there is also a ray of hope that the judiciary can correct itself. After making mistakes, the judiciary can correct itself. So I will start with the facts which are mostly unpleasant. Some of them you probably already know, others may be new to you. And I want to do justice to Ghazali Sahib's book. By staying true to the scope and complexity that the book has offered. The comprehensive coverage of the topic of the book is evident from its table of contents that lists 9 chapters and 6 appendices. The chapters relate to issues of civil rights, Islamophobia, campaign against Muslim charities, Muslims facing inquisition, institutionalized profiling, stereotyping, hate crimes, silencing of Muslim voices, and finally, Muslim response to the post 9/11 challenges. So you can see that he has covered almost all the important areas on the topic. Ghazali Sahib has framed the message of his book using a clear, easy to follow, and inviting format. The preface points to the steady erosion of the fundamental rights and civil liberties, all in the name of national security. And the preface ends with a compelling analogy. I want to read the words of Ghazali Sahib's very eloquent language here. And I start the quotation with, "It will not be too much to say that after the Japanese attack on the Pearl Harbor, more than 110,000 Japanese Americans on the West Coast were imprisoned in 10 relocation camps in the US. But after 9/11, the whole country is converted into a virtual detention camp for the Muslims in America by abridging their civil rights." So that's a very eloquently stated position. Then the book proceeds to systematically introduce and discuss each topic with careful attention to historical precedents and root causes and symptoms of America's post 9/11 syndrome. Among the facts and statistics, he mentions and chronicles the physical attacks not only on Muslims but also on anyone even remotely looking like a Muslim or an Arab. And these attacks occurred with alarming frequency. And it was like unleashing a reign of terror on the Muslims in this country, and that continues unabated to this day. I'm sure you heard about horror stories recently. One cab driver that the book mentions, he was asked by the passenger if he was a Muslim in New York. When he said yes, he was a Muslim, the passenger stabbed him and he barely survived. The other fact which I can add, more recent, is the one at the New York subway station. Somebody who looked South Indian was standing waiting for the train, and some woman came from behind, pushed him into the tracks of the train, and he was killed. And these are kind of hate crimes which are extremely mind-boggling because they really make no sense. So I will mention a few more very startling statements by leaders of the country. Republican Congressman Tom Tancredo called for a nuclear attack on Islam's holy site in Mecca if there is another terror attack on the US, blatantly disregarding the commonsensical fact that the Muslims living in the US had nothing whatsoever to do with the 9/11 attacks. And then a woman by the name Ann Coulter, a right-wing syndicated columnist, went even further in suggesting that the US should invade Muslim countries, kill their leaders, and convert them to Christianity. On July 25th, 2005, a Washington, D.C. talk show host repeated 23 times that Islam is a terrorist organization. The problem, he said, is not extremism. The problem is Islam. Disappointingly to Muslims, in some cases, even the judicial system failed to defend Muslims' civil rights. A letter inviting Americans to kill Muslims was published in an Arizona newspaper. Arizona State Supreme Court rejected to intervene, citing the newspaper's First Amendment right to free speech. The books makes the important point, this book makes the important point that double standard is in practice in this country. In the case of Muslims, hate speech and vicious anti-Muslim propaganda was protected and encouraged under the guise of free speech, whereas such attacks on other religious groups would have been considered unacceptable. Another incident mentioned by Ghazali Sahab is the high-profile case in Lodi, California, where two imams and a son of one of them were arrested. No charges were filed against them, but they were deported to Pakistan for immigration law violations that would never have received the same scrutiny had the suspects not been Muslim. The 2008 presidential election unleashed a new and particularly vitriolic and damaging form of Muslim bashing in America. You probably know that it's pretty recent and it was a high-profile situation. Barack Obama, the presidential candidate, himself an avowed Christian, was portrayed as a possible Muslim. A picture of Obama wearing a white turban popularizes the myth, never mentioning that the picture was taken during the then Senator Obama's trip to Kenya. Some Republican politicians, such as Peter King of New York, warned that if, quote, Obama is elected president, then the radical Islamists and their supporters will be dancing in the streets in greater numbers than they did on September 11. So these are all facts mentioned in this book, and I am not going to add to the list other than just say that two more very important issues cropped up. One was the Ground Zero Mosque controversy, and the other was the Sharia law threatening to take over this country's constitution. So you probably know that President Obama supported the construction of Ground Zero mosques, saying that every community has a right to build its places of worship wherever they want, like any other community. However, under constant attack, he had to be forced to modify his statement. Then the other person is the mayor of New York, Bloomberg. He openly supported the construction of the mosque. So there is positive development at the top level also. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he included mosque in the California legislation as protection granted to other places of worship. So I think we have to celebrate all the positive things, and I compliment Ghazali Sahab for including those in his book. I'll conclude with his own words from the last chapter of the book, and his lines are: American Muslims have a strong sense of optimism and anticipation that the current wave of anti-Islam will recede in due time, and they will regain their civic vitality and rejoin the mosaic of other minorities and ethnic groups. The American Muslims will join their predecessors, Japanese Americans, American Jews, Irish Americans, and African Americans, who also, in times past, endured national intolerance, social prejudice, and legal injustice. I'm very happy to see that the names of Samina Saiba and Khalid Sahab of American Muslim Voice are prominently mentioned in the book. They deserve it. And thanks.
Very brief campaigns like invite your neighbor for iftar, share the joy of Eid with your neighbors. And then we have established in 2010 in Washington, D.C., National Get to Know Your Neighbors Day. So that's first Sunday in each October. Open your hearts. And when I was doing research for that project, according to Islam, who is your neighbor? 40 houses on the right, 40 houses on the left, 40 houses in the front, 40 houses in the back. So let's cut the 0, and let's do 4, 4, 4, 4 for a beginning. Can you please sign up? Because the world is ready for you. I think it's time we come out and really bless the world with our presence. And I'm not saying that we are better than others, but they are looking for you. Be out there. It is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Professor Arthur Scott, Professor of Humanities and Cultural Studies in the Dominican University of California. Welcome.
Alaikum salam. The way I like to always introduce myself is I'm a practicing Sufi. And I belong to them. I work with the Ghazali'S school, and my one little plug today is this coming weekend in San Rafael at the Marriott, there will be a wonderful Sufi symposium that begins Friday night, Saturday and Sunday, focusing on poetry and music. And as I was listening very closely to the presenters honoring Sattar's wonderful work, and it really is wonderful work, one of the thoughts I had was there's a very profound spiritual dimension to all this. And what the spiritual dimension is comes right from the heart of Islam. And that spiritual dimension revolves around the word tawhid. And there's a certain kind of wholeness, there's a certain kind of oneness, there's a certain kind of wonderment. And despite the ups and downs, despite 9/11, despite the Patriot Act, despite Islamophobia, despite what I call the green terror and the green violence, we're all still here today. And I think over the last 10 years, as a community, the Muslim community has really made some incredible advances. And we've done this through interfaith dialogue, opening up our communities, inviting people to come to our mosque, having events like this. So from my perspective, Islam is on the ascent. Islam is here to stay. Islam will very quickly become part of the American tapestry. And the book that he has written, in many ways, is a contributing force to that. One of the things that I really enjoyed about it is how well documented it is, the excellent examples that he uses. And what he does over and over again, he brings out our humanity, not the fear and phobia, the humanity of Islam. Islam is the religion of peace, surrender, and justice. That's why he wrote the book, right? To remind us, Muslims, remind the rest of the world, this is who we are. This is not the phobia or bias or prejudice that you think we are, right? So what has really come about over the last 10 years is, I think, an incredible breath of fresh air in which there are incredible new openings, in which Islam, as a faith and religion, as a community, we will indeed become an integral part of the American mainstream and become an integral part of the American democracy. And by fighting for our rights, our civil rights, we're fighting for the rights of everyone. And that reinforces the fabric of democracy, isn't it? So let's give ourselves a wonderful applause for all of this, and particularly the wonderful work that Dr. Sattar has done. Thank you very much.
He just majored in political science from Punjab University, Pakistan. He started his career working for Bange Haram newspaper in Peshawar. He also served as news editor in the Daily News Kuwait from 1969 to 1976. Mr. Ghazali joined the English News Department of Kuwait Television in December 1976. He retired in 1998 as the editor-in-chief. He also worked as a correspondent in Kuwait for the Associated Press of Pakistan and Daily Dawn, a leading Pakistani newspaper. Mr. Ghazali also worked briefly as editorial writer in the Daily Dawn, Pakistan. He has authored the following books: Islamic Pakistan, Illusion and Reality, 1996, Islam in the West in the Post-Cold War Era, 1999, Islam and Modernism, 2000, Hegemony of the Ruling Elite in Pakistan, 2000, Islam and Muslims in the Post-9/11 America. I don't know when he sleeps. He contributed to an issue, How Does Religion Influence Politics?, published in 2010 by Gail St. Gage Learning, Farmington Hill, Michigan. He also contributed a chapter on civil rights to Blessings of Liberty, Individual Rights, published in April 2012 by Perfect Learning, Clive, Iowa. The book is for the K-12 educational market. He also contributed a chapter, Why the US Image Declined in the Muslim World, to US Foreign Policy Towards the Muslim World, focus on 9/11 period, published in 2010. He has written extensively on the Middle East, South Asian, and American Muslims issues, which is published widely by the media in the Middle East, India, Pakistan, and the United States. He is currently working as a freelance journalist and the executive editor of American Muslim Perspective. Hold on, I'm not done yet. His most important contribution is as American Muslim Voice. Remember that. American Muslim Voice is communicator director and webmaster. No, joking aside, Mr. Ghazali has made tremendous contributions for the good of Islam and Muslim community. Please join me giving Mr. Ghazali a warm welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I thank you for attending the formal launching of this book. I am grateful for all of you for your support and your presence for the important day in my life. I particularly thank Dr. J.C. Ortiz, Mr. Khalid Saeed, Mr. Tashi Zahir, Mr. Naeem Sayed, and Dr. Abdul Jabbar. I think it is Dr. Abdul Jabbar, Mr. Craig Wisner, California State Assembly Member Bill Quirk, and Dr. Aga Saeed and Professor Arthur Scott for making time to write comments about my book. I would especially like to thank Mr. Khalid Saeed, Mr. Naeem Sayed and Dr. J.C. Ortiz for coming such a distance to be part of this gathering. A special thanks also to Mr. Talat Mahmood. I think I am pronouncing your name correctly for the first time maybe. Mr. Talat Mahmood of Modesto, he is coming all the way from Modesto, who has designed a beautiful color for this book. He is here with Dr. Hassan Hussain from Modesto. Today's event, see this, there is a problem. Okay, now I think. Today's event reminds me about the launching of my first book about Pakistan in 1996 in Kuwait, where I worked in print and electronic media for more than 3 decades. The book, titled Islamic Pakistan, Illusions and Reality, was printed in Islamabad. It was also published on the internet. In those days, web publishing was not very common. Surprisingly, I got many comments about the book from different parts of the world. One of the persons who commented on my book was business consultant Dr. Ahmed Faruqi from the Bay Area. And I was delighted to meet him here unexpectedly in 2001. Coming back to my latest book, you have listened very informative comments and observations about the contents of my book, which is a documentation about what happened to the Muslim American community during the last decade. Now, most important task or challenge before our community is how to move forward despite all odds. Our community has responded to the post 9/11 challenges with political and social activism, media campaigns, outreach and interfaith dialogue. I see the community more proactive as it believes that the best way to protect its eroding civil rights is to become more active politically. From coast to coast, Muslim and Arab American groups are organizing as never before to make known their concerns about the shrinking civil liberties. They have gone beyond sign-waving demonstrations to hold voter registration drives, meet with politicians, and form alliances with other civil rights and religious organizations. Muslims are becoming more organized and vocal in their demands, petitioning school boards to establish prayer rooms in public schools for their children and turning to the courts when they believe their constitutional rights to practice their faith have been violated. I am proud to say that American Muslim Voice is pioneer in introducing the concept of peace picnics and open houses as an effective outreach to the fellow Americans. Samina Sundar Saiba opened her house during the month of Ramadan and invited fellow Americans to see how Muslims fast in the month of Ramadan. Many mainstream faith groups and community organizations followed American Muslim Voice in organizing peace picnics and open houses. I believe the best way to meet current challenges is to make alliances with other ethnic communities. And I can say that I have many members of many ethnic community members are here in our audience. And the second point is to have interfaith dialogue with other faith groups. And in this gathering, we have people from various faith groups. And the third thing is to be more proactive politically and socially. My book is a narrative of the Muslim community by a Muslim. I believe we should not allow others to define us. This reminds me of a 1990 movie, Dancing with Wolves. The selling point of this movie was that it was the first movie made from the American Indian point of view. My book, Islam and Muslims in the post 9/11 America, may not be the first narrative about what happened to Muslims during the last decade, but I can say that this is a substantial addition to the Muslim narratives. At the end, I would like to say that all the work I have done in my entire life, I have written many books all the time, I am busy in these things, so including raising my 3 wonderful children, would not have been possible without the support of my loving wife, Meera Sultana. Once again, I thank everybody for making this event successful, and thank you.
To introduce the presiding chair, Dr. Wahid Siddiqui. I hold tremendous respect for him And I think all the work that we are doing, he is a pioneer in establishing that through Ummah. So thank you, Ummah. Thank you, Dr. Wahid Siddiqui.
Assalamu alaikum. Let me put your minds at ease. I will take no more than 2 minutes to make my comments. My feelings about Ghazali Sahib's writings can be expressed by an Urdu couplet, slightly modified. I will translate that couplet after reciting it in Urdu for people who don't understand Urdu. It goes like this. देखना तकरीर की लज्जत के जो उसने कहा, देखना तकरीर की लज्जत के जो उसने कहा, मैंने ये जाना कि गोया ये मेरे दिल में भी है. Look at the beauty of his writing, that whatever he writes, I feel as if this is what I also wanted to say. Ghazali Sahib has a special talent of writing reports of events, books, very effectively in a short time. Recently, Ummah had a function on 23rd of February. Ghazali Sahib attended that function, took a lot of pictures, and in less than 24 hours, he wrote an exhaustive and very detailed and very insightful reports about this event. I was very impressed. You have all heard about his works in publishing books, etc., but this recent incident gave me a lot of respect for him. My prayer for him is also again an Urdu line, Allah kare zore kharam aur ziyada. May your power of writing increase more and more every day, Ghazali Sahib. I congratulate you for publishing this book, and please keep on writing and express our views through your books. MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum.
Ghazali Sahib would be available in the back if you want to buy a book so he could sign it. I encourage you to do that. Even if you don't want to read, donate it to your library, because that would be sadaqah jariyah on your behalf. So it's not very expensive. This would be your charity for a long time. So on behalf of American Muslim Voice, I would like to thank all of you for being here. Without you, it would not have been possible. $20. Javed Ilahi sir asked me to edit my message. He said, buy 2 books, one for yourself and one for the library. Okay, there's also a Jashn-e-Eid Miladun Nabi on March 16, 2013, 6 p.m. at Mehran. This is on your table, so please look at that and attend.
अस्सलामुअलैकुम। आप लोगों को बताना था 2 प्रोग्राम्स हो रहे हैं। एक तो आज 10 मार्च को शाम को तहरीक इंसाफ का PTI का प्रोग्राम है मेहरान रेस्टोरेंट में, और मैं फौजिया कसूरी साहिबा पाकिस्तान से तशरीफ़ लाई हैं और जो आजकल हो रहा है पाकिस्तान में उसके बारे में कुछ ब्रीफिंग देंगी। फ्री लंच है, डिनर है साथ 6 o'clock पे मेहरान रेस्टोरेंट में जी। आज शाम को 6 बजे। और 16 मार्च को है जश्न ईद मिलादुन नबी, और पाकिस्तान के माया नाथ खान जो है डॉक्टर आमिर लियाकत हुसैन तशरीफ़ ला रहे हैं। 16 16 मार्च 2013 6 o'clock एट मेहरान रेस्टोरेंट। प्लीज़ आप लोग आएँ, जो लोग आना चाहते हैं। और ये प्रोग्राम हम लोग जो किया जा रहा है, ये सुल्ताना महमूदा सुल्ताना फाउंडेशन के लिए, जो वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन चला रहे हैं, जो अब्यूज़ वुमेन के लिए एंड दस्तरखान चलाते हैं पाकिस्तान में गरीब लोगों को खाना खिलाने के लिए। तो प्लीज़ आप लोग आए 16 मार्च को डॉक्टर आमिर लियाकत हुसैन के साथ एक शाम गुजारें और नात उनकी पुरगून नाते सुने। और टिकट के लिए आप मुझे भी कॉल कर सकते हैं, सीमा है उनके पास है टिकट, और इसके ऊपर एड्स लगी हुई हैं और न्यूज़पेपर्स में भी आ रहा है। तो आप लोग प्लीज़, और उसमें जियो न्यूज़ के उसमें भी आ रहा है, तो आप लोग टेलीफोन नंबर लेके टिकट बुक करा दें। टिकट्स आर VIP tickets are $50 and general tickets are $25. Thank you.
किसी ने मार दिया इसको लात।
एक तरफ के पैसे दिए
Did you see there's a coverage in the newspaper? Did you send?
Thank you.